Hi, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove, and I am back with this week's coaching reality series called From a Coach's Perspective. Today, I want to list off the 5 signs that you are potentially wasting your time in the gym. Now, this is another controversial topic because a lot of people think they train hard, they train intense. However, when you look at it from another perspective, maybe from someone who's been training for a few extra years than you, someone who's maybe made further progress from you, I'm not just saying myself, but in general, and you're watching other people get ahead of you and you're wondering, why are those people surpassing me in the gym? You yourself might be guilty of maybe one or two of these signs, or maybe all 5 of these signs. So I want to list off these. And it's also important too, if someone is a beginner in the gym, because a lot of beginners, myself included at the time, made tons of mistake, some of these 5 signs as well. And I think it's important if you are a beginner to watch this episode just to make sure that you don't fall victim to any of these signs. Because I can tell you from someone who wasted a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money, putting myself into the gym, putting myself with supplements, training programs, and didn't get any results from it. And it was very frustrating. And I don't want you to go down that same path. And if you are someone who's been training for a few years and you just stopped making progress, or maybe you hit a few plateaus, you might want to check and make sure you're not doing any of these signs yourself. All right. Because if you are, there's a good chance that you're going to have a hard time achieving further results with your health, your physique, and your fitness. So I'm going to list off these 5 signs. And if you have any comments, leave them in the comment section below. DM me. Let me know maybe some things that you feel people do in the gym that might slow down their progress. Because it's always good to help each other out, and maybe some things that you've done that have worked for you. Okay, some strategies that you've implemented into either your training program, your nutritional plan, your supplement protocol that's going to help someone else surpass a plateau with their health and their physique. All right. So the first sign that you're wasting your time in the gym, every workout you do is random. Now, I've talked about this in the No Filter Q&A, the coaching reality episodes, my YouTube shorts, my Instagram posts. You have to have a plan. You have to have a game plan. Your workouts have to make sense. You want to approach your training sessions methodically. You want to train intelligently. And if you're just picking random exercises, going from one station to the next, and a workout's not really making any sense, one muscle group doesn't complement the next, you're not going to achieve pretty much any results with your physique. I mean, you might see some small changes if you're a beginner, but you're not going to see anything drastic because the workout doesn't make sense. So what I mean by that, if you're going to the gym and you're doing a barbell bench press, and then you go into a barbell military press. Well, that doesn't make any sense because you're doing a chest press for, 4 or 5 sets, and then you're going to switch over to a barbell military press. When you're doing the chest press, you're already using your shoulders. So why would you do your shoulders right after your chest? That to me, not only does it make sense, it's actually quite dangerous, which is why I don't recommend training shoulders with chest. In fact, I recommend if you're going to do 2 muscle groups together, do chest and back, agonist versus antagonist, bicep versus tricep, agonist versus antagonist, right? Shoulders, I give them their own day, right? Because you get your anterior deltoid, your medial deltoid, your posterior deltoid, your trapezius, and your rhomboids. Okay. Legs, you can do quadriceps and hamstrings. And that way the muscle groups are complementing one another. Or if you follow just a 6-day training split, you put each muscle group on a single day. Okay. So your workouts have to make sense. And again, I see this a lot with beginners because beginners don't really know what they're doing and they don't really understand anatomy and physiology, which I totally get, which is why I do recommend if you are a beginner to work with a coach. But if you choose not to work with a coach, at least follow some YouTube programs from someone who is an experienced, knowledgeable coach that can give you some pointers. Okay. The only problem though, when you are a beginner and you're trying to follow a YouTube video or you're trying to follow TikTok videos or apps, no one's there to correct your form or technique. So even though you might think you're doing what the person on the screen is doing correctly, you could very well not be because no one's there to adjust your form, correct your technique, give you proper cues. Okay, so just be very careful following those videos if you have no idea what you're doing in the gym. And honestly, if you don't have any idea of what you're doing in your gym, hire a coach for a few sessions just so you can learn the basics and the fundamentals. That'll make a huge difference in your training programs, and it's going to be the best ROI you ever receive on your health and your physique. All right. Sign number 2 that you're wasting your time in the gym. You never get stronger. Now, sometimes this is because people don't like to leave their comfort zones, right? Which again is going to slow down your progress. But you should be getting stronger on a fairly regular basis, especially if you're a beginner or if you're an intermediate trainer. If you've been someone who's been training for 20 plus years, like myself, it gets a little harder to get stronger after all these years because you've really hit the peak. And the only way, in my opinion, to get even stronger would be to go on anabolic steroids, right? But if you are someone who's beginner, I remember when I was a beginner and I learned how to train properly, my strength was going up on a monthly basis on all my exercises because I was so fresh. My receptors were fresh. My muscles were fresh. I had no injuries, no nagging injuries, I should say, like no physical limitations. I had less wear and tear on my joints. So I felt good. And so if you are someone who's been training for a few months or even a few years, you should still be making steady progress with your strength. If you're not, you're doing something wrong. What you could be doing wrong is you're doing the same shit over and over again. Try something new. If you're stuck on, I don't know, 135 pounds on a bench press and you haven't been able to move that weight up in a year, take the bench press out for a bit. Maybe switch it for dumbbell bench press. So you take out the barbell bench press and you put in dumbbell bench presses. Right there, even though you're utilizing the same plane and the same range of motion, you're using a different piece of equipment. So you're doing what we call a nice lateral movement versus a compound movement. So you're opening up your mobility and your flexibility for pectoralis major and minor in this case. Do that for a few months and go back to the barbell bench press. I guarantee you, if you do that, you'll notice you have an increase in strength on your barbell movements. Okay, so don't be afraid to switch up exercises, not just for the sake of switching up exercises, but don't be afraid to switch up exercises if you notice that after a few months you're not gaining strength, you're not gaining size. Then it's time to switch up your program. Okay. But if everything's going well and you're making steady gains, keep the program the same. No reason to change anything. Okay. So don't be afraid to change things if they're not working. And a good indicator that things are not working is if your strength is not going up. All right. Sign number three that you are wasting your time in the gym. More talking than lifting. These days, I should say it's more texting, more scrolling Instagram, more watching TikTok videos than talking. The phones are a huge distraction. And I've talked about this for years. I truly believe the phones are detrimental in the gym. Unless you yourself are in the fitness industry and you're trying to record workout videos or how to do exercises correctly for people, I truly believe there's no reason to have a phone in the gym. Okay. Even for myself, I record one workout a week. That's it. Just one. And I post it up on my Instagram. Sometimes it's a back workout, sometimes it's a chest workout, shoulder workout, arm workout, leg workout, whatever it may be. And I'll usually put a tutorial video out as well on how to do things. But that's my job. I'm in the industry. I'm trying to promote my services. If I'm not in the fitness industry, I have no reason to put out this content. For what? For validation from strangers? Not necessary. Okay, so again, there's really no reason for the phones, in my opinion, to be in the gym. If you want to leave your phone in your pocket while you play your music, I see no problem with that. I do that all the time. But I'm not checking emails. I'm not cruising Instagram. I'm not texting people. I'm not even responding to emails that I receive from clients when I work out. That's the 1 hour of the day where I don't respond to any emails. Okay. So people can't even get a hold of me when I'm working out because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. And that's what needs to be done when you're training. You can't be sitting there on your phone. You can't be talking to your gym neighbors. Okay. You really have to be zoned in. And people will argue with me and say, well, don't you rest between sets? And I say, well, of course I rest. But there's a big difference between resting 45 to 60 seconds, staring into space, getting ready for your next set mentally, as opposed to resting for 2, 5 minutes in between sets, looking at your phone, talking to your gym neighbor. Huge difference. All right. So the two are not comparable. Okay. So that is the third sign. Oh, excuse me. The third sign. Excuse me. I came down with a little cold the other day, so I'm still trying to get over it. So excuse me if my throat's a little raspy. That's the third sign that you're wasting your time in the gym. But I would argue that that's the number one sign most people are wasting their time in the gym when they spend too much time talking, okay, texting, scrolling. You got to stop those bad habits. They're only going to slow you down. Save that for the rest of your day. But your workout, you should be zoned in for your workout. That's what you're there to do. You're there to train. So focus on training. Leave all the other shit, all the other distractions in the back. Okay. Focus on going forward with your training and don't let any of the other distractions get in your way. All right. The fourth sign that you're wasting your time in the gym, no training log. Now, if you follow me for a few years, you know I like to make fun of training diaries because I've never used a training log. However, now that I've been training for quite a few years myself, I feel that a lot of people actually do need training logs because what I realize is a lot of people don't really pay attention to the weights they're lifting, the exercise they're doing. So they don't really remember how much they were bench pressing the previous week. They have no idea how much they were curling the week prior. And for me, I don't know what it is. Maybe I have a photographic memory, but I know all my clients' weights. I see them in my head and I know, okay, I know where I'm going to start you. I know where I'm going to finish you. And the same thing for me. So I don't need to have a logbook as to what I'm doing. But I think a lot of people do. And a lot of people would benefit from recording their workouts, not on their phone, unless they really feel they need to record the workouts on their phone, but just recording your lifts. Okay, last week I did 135 pounds in the bench press. Just good to have for knowledge. So what did I start with? Oh, I started with 90 pounds. Okay, so then you just look at your log and you could be on your phone, but look at your log and say, okay, well, I did 90 pounds to start, so I'm going to start with 90 pounds and start building my way up again. All right. So that keeps you consistent. It also lets you understand, gives you some data, some feedback as to how you're progressing. Because if you're bench pressing 135 in January and you're still bench pressing 135 in December, you're not making any progress, right? So you want to have that data to look back on. And if you're someone who doesn't have the greatest memory, that's fine. Record it, log it, keep it in your phone, keep it if you're old school and you want to write it down in a logbook, that's fine. But just record it for your own knowledge, and it's something that you can look back on. And more so, not necessarily that you need to keep increasing your weights, but more so be like, what did I start this exercise with last week? What was my warm-up weight? Because there's a good chance that you might warm up too light or too heavy. Okay, I've seen that before too. And I've seen that happen many times to people. So you want to be very careful with the weights you're choosing to warm up and to cool down. And by keeping a logbook on hand, that really helps because there's no guessing. And unless, like I said, you have a great memory when it comes to the weights in the gym that you're using, then you obviously don't need a logbook. But I feel a lot of people would benefit from keeping record of the weights that they're lifting in the gym. All right. And the final sign that you're wasting your time in the gym. You judge workouts based on how sweaty you are. This one's ridiculous. Listen, I've talked about this for years. We all have different amounts of sweat glands, fat cells, okay, muscle building properties, okay. Some people naturally sweat more than others. And some people will argue and say, well, people who are overweight sweat more than others. Yeah, okay, maybe because they're exerting more energy when they do certain movements. But overall, there are some people who naturally just sweat more than other people. I myself, I've never been a big sweater. I'm not really someone who sweats a lot. Okay. But I have clients on my roster who are in incredible shape, but they sweat buckets during a workout. And it's not that they're training harder than someone who doesn't sweat as much. Okay. It's just that they have more sweat glands. Okay. So they're going to sweat more profusely as opposed to someone who has less sweat glands. Okay. So just because you sweat more does not necessarily mean that you're burning more calories. Okay, that's a huge misconception. All right. And just because you sweat more does not necessarily mean that you're training more intensely than someone who's not sweating as much. Okay. So both of these are are I should say one of these is very common for a lot of people to think that, oh, well, I sweat a lot, so I must be getting a good workout. Listen, you could put yourself in a hot room and do 50 push-ups and you're going to break a sweat. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're getting a better workout than someone who puts together a structured chest program and goes to the gym and maybe there's AC in the gym, so they're not going to sweat as much, but they're training methodically, they're lifting intelligently. I would argue that that person is getting a better workout than the person that just is sweating. All right. So more sweat does not equate to more calories being burned or more intensity in the gym, period. All right. So you got to get that thought process out of your head. Instead, think, okay, how can I stimulate the muscles to true failure so that I have to force them to adapt to change? That's what you should be thinking when you go to the gym. And it's about taking those muscles to failure, exhausting your muscles so that you can go home, rest, recover, hydrate, eat, sleep, fuel your body properly so the protein synthesis occurs and so that the muscle building process occurs. That's what you should be focusing on, not how much I'm going to sweat today in the gym. That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. Same thing goes for fat burning. Okay. A lot of people think if they sweat more, they're going to burn more fat. No, more sweat does not equate to more fat loss. It doesn't, period. Again, you go to hot yoga, you're going to sweat buckets, but I would argue that you're actually going to burn more calories on a treadmill for an hour than you will in a hot yoga class. All right. Because you're going to exert more energy running than you will doing yoga stretches. And I'm not saying yoga is bad. I'm comparing the two from a caloric exponential. Okay. So more sweat does not equate to more calories lost. It just equates to more water being lost. Anyway, those are my five signs that you're wasting your time in the gym. As I mentioned, if you have any comments, any feedback, leave them below. I always like to hear from people. If you have any strategies that you implement to make sure that you don't waste your time in the gym, leave them below. It's good to share knowledge with people, share tips on training programs, nutrition and dietary secrets that you might have, supplement protocols, whatever it may be. It's always good to share that knowledge with everyone. Anyway, that's it for this week's Coaching Reality episode. I do apologize. I am still a little bit run down, so I'm not fully clear. I'm still on some medication, so I'm trying my best to get through today's coaching episode, but I know I'm not speaking as clearly as usual. I should be back to my normal self again next week, but I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week for the no filter Q&A coming out on Monday. And hopefully I'll be feeling a lot better by then. Thanks again, and I'll see you all later on. Bye for now.